there were probably a few things that I was doing that wasn't necessarily being exploited by tons of people. We just heard from Adam that he shut a sport down in the country.
Yes, it's definitely one of my bucket list items ticked off.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlayLive. And if you want to see what InPlayLive is all about on the inside, we've got that promo code for you, Behind the Lines, all caps. All right, I'm your host, Shane Mercer. That guy over there, Andrew Pace, founder of the most sophisticated sports betting community on planet Earth, InPlayLive. And Pace, wow, we've got a show for the audience today. A guest who has devoted his entire life to sports betting. And now he is taking those skills, experience, that talent, he's brought it to North America, and he's trying to level the playing field and creating a space for fair play in North America. Really excited to have Adam Bjorn on the show. That interview coming at you in just a few minutes. But Pace, first, a few things I want to get to before we get to Adam. First, starting with last week's episode where I shared my story, my journey to 100,000. Pace, I can't overstate the amount of positive feedback and comments I've received since we released that episode last week. The number of messages to my DMs and in our Discord server, just overwhelming. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody out there who reached out, who sent me a message, sent me a note of congratulations. And I don't think I totally understood or comprehended how much my story might impact someone else's journey. And I'm sort of a bit taken aback by all that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I noticed once we saw people start succeeding inside of our community, and one of the things that was overwhelming for me was hearing some of the success stories come from it felt like unexpected places. Like, this one guy who made his first $10,000 that he never had, and like what that meant to him and his family. And then the next guy that, hit the first guy who hit six figures in profit, and like hearing about that and just thinking that was beyond my wildest dreams. But I think the big thing for a lot of other people that maybe don't necessarily have the success, or even people that do have the success that maybe learned something from you, because I know that a lot of people inside of the community take this approach of, it doesn't matter if it's a brand new sports bettor entering the group or someone who's hit, seven figures that's been doing it for a really long time. There's probably a learning opportunity when you have someone that takes it seriously, if the two people are able to connect. But yeah, it really doesn't matter, what level that you necessarily are. It's that you get something out of it, and it's really powerful stuff. So yeah, again, like huge congrats, and I'm glad people were able to appreciate your story, because that's really what it's all about. And I think that is going to make you a better as well, Shane. Just being able to interact with some people that have questions for you and things like that. And it's great stuff.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I already kind of feel that. And like you said, you learn from, I'm learning from guys like you, Pace, and Kenny, and some of the other pros, but I'm also learning from, like you said, people who are just reaching out and they're asking me, questions. And then I'm looking at my data, and now I'm seeing things or looking at things and sort of reevaluating things maybe as part of that dialogue with people who are just trying to learn. So it's just a great way to, it's a great community to just learn from each other. And I'm really kind of, not that I didn't see the benefits of it before, but I've really seen them this past week. So that's been really kind of cool for me. All right. As part of the learning journey, I want to get to another episode that we aired a few weeks back, SX Bet. If you haven't listened to the episode where we had the team on from SX, I very much encourage you to go back, have a listen to that episode from a few weeks ago, because man, there's just so much in there, and it's really, really fascinating stuff that the team over at SX is doing. But I just wanted to sort of share a little bit about my experiences with it so far. So I've been on SX now for, I think, about 3 weeks, or since that episode aired anyway. So 3 weeks to a month. And it's been really, really cool, and learning about, the cryptocurrency exchange space and how it all works. But I've also made a couple of mistakes along the way, so I'm hoping some people can learn from my mistakes out there. One is you want to bet in USDC, which is a crypto token tied to the US dollar. That's what everybody's betting in over there. You can place bets in Ethereum, which is sort of how I thought I was going to go about it. But then I realized, wait, no, everybody is participating in this exchange using USD. So make sure you get USD when you get in there and don't make that mistake that I made. And another big mistake I made is one of the coolest things about SXBet is that I can offer bets. So I can essentially become the book and I can post the line at the odds that I want it at and see if somebody's going to take it. And that's a really, really cool aspect of it. But I made a major mistake when a few weeks back, when I was sort of just learning it, where I posted a no next goal opportunity in hockey, where I was essentially I wanted the under, and I clicked offer and it didn't go through, and I was looking at about a half unit here, and I thought it didn't go through, I should say, and then I clicked it again, offer, and still I thought it didn't go through. And then I was like, what's going on here? And then boom, there was a goal in the game. And I was like, oh crap. Okay, good thing that didn't go through. That didn't go through. I'm quite happy now that thinking that it didn't go through. And I get up and I walk away. And I come back an hour later to see that I'm down a unit. So not only did the offer go up, and there's a way to go and check to see if your offer went up. So if you are offering bets, make sure you go and check. But not only did the offer go up, I think I just let it sit there after this goal. So I hung a line. And I just let my line hang there. And sure enough, somebody came along and sniped it. I don't know, Pace, it was probably you, or it could have been someone else, seeing it hanging out there. But, you don't want to be hanging lines out there like that. So make sure you go and you check those offered bets. You don't make that kind of a mistake. Pace, what's your experience been like so far on SX?
Well, before we get there, I mean, you just pretty much said that you offered a line and you kind of laughed about it because number one, you're going to get it back. Number two, it was a learning experience. And you didn't even touch on the fact that you couldn't go claw or void it or take it back.
Yeah, no, I couldn't take it back. And you know what? I was mad at myself for making the mistake. Like, oh, you idiot. Like, how did you not you should have checked and all of those kinds of things. But not once did I feel any kind of negative emotions towards whoever it was that went and took my hanging line. In fact, kudos to them. They saw an opportunity. They took it. Good for them.
Thanks, Shane. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, whoever it was, good on you for grabbing it. I don't blame you at all. Not even kind of. It was all my fault. And I wish the sportsbooks behaved in that way too, where they took some onus and said, hey, we made a mistake and we got to eat that mistake and own the mistake.
Right. Well, I think from my experience with SX is obviously a little bit longer than yours. I will just say, if you guys are just hearing about this, use code INPLAY when you sign up. You get a $1,500 bonus, which is just an incredible bonus. I think it's the best bonus in the entire industry because you still have access to your money. So the free bets trickle in based on how much you're playing. And if you don't play through the right amount or anything, there's no concern. You can access your money at any time. But it's funny that you bring that up, Shane, because last night was Golden Knights Game 7. We're shooting this on a Monday. Golden Knights against the Stars. And there's been a few times throughout the playoffs here where I've offered a line on something where I actually can't call the bet because I offer a line that you can't get somewhere else. And if I get that line accepted, I know I have that action. But then if I were to say to InPlay Live, hey guys, I just took the Canucks money line at 2.4, people are going to be like, where the fuck did you get that? And it's like, oh, I created a line on SX and someone took the other side of it. So what I try to do if I'm creating a line is pricing it so that whoever buys the other side's getting the best price, but I also know that I as well am getting a line that wouldn't exist anywhere else. So I actually did that last night with Vegas between the periods, and then I was like, okay, I got the game on here. I'm gonna go start making some dinner, and I swear to God, I had fucking raw chicken all over my hands, right? The third period started and I'm like, okay, I got to wrap this up because I need to make sure that if a goal is scored by Dallas, that this bet isn't offered anymore. So I have freaking chicken all over my hands. I'm cooking and I literally say to myself, okay, I'm just going to make one more piece of chicken. And then the horns go off, the crowd goes wild, Dallas scores, and I got a couple $1,000 offered on the Dallas side. And I got some pretty expensive equipment here in front of me. And I'm like, I really I am in my head processing, like, am I getting my chicken hands on my equipment, or am I risking ruining that, or am I giving up this money? So I like freak out. Lace is like, how can I help? How can I help? What can I do? I'm fucking scrubbing my hands with soap. I sprint over and cancel my bet. And I exhale. I'm like, oh, that was almost expensive.
So you got it. Back. You did cancel it in time.
Well, lucky. The difference between our two stories there is I know that you have to do that, and you learned the hard way to do that, because I've been doing it for quite a little bit now, with offering bets and things like that. But honestly, with the SX stuff, what's great for me is I'm not a pregame bettor, as you guys know, but I have placed some bets on the Canucks that I'm really not going to call to the group. It's just for fun. It's betting with my family, my friends, that kind of thing, when I go watch the game or I go to the game or whatever. And like, really good example was game 6. The Canucks were in Nashville, and books were paying about 2.05-ish, maybe a little higher, pregame on the Canucks. I filled an order at like 2.27 on the Canucks pregame on SX. And it's because I offered the best line on the Predators and still got that line on the Canucks. So like, to anyone that's betting pregame, and you want a line that doesn't necessarily exist, or you want a better line than what's out there and exists, offer that sweet spot where you're giving a better line on the one side and you're getting a better price on the other side. And there's so many like algorithmic bot type players on SX that they'll come in and buy the price of the other side without even a person or player actually coming in and clicking it. That'll just be some sort of like syndicate or bot that's buying it just because it is the best line that's being offered. So I love it from that standpoint. It's been a lot of fun. And especially like, I don't know, maybe like someone in tonight's game, and you can just set a reminder, offer the line from like, let's just say it's noon, offer the line from noon until tip or puck drop, and set an alarm 5 minutes beforehand to go cancel that line if it isn't filled. But I'm finding they're getting filled because, like I said, you're offering the best price.
Yeah. And if people out there are wondering, well, how is it that that both sides are able to get the best price in this scenario? Well, it's because there's no VIG. And SX has kind of eliminated that VIG. And so both sides are really, truly able to get the best price there. And, for more on that and sort of to learn more, I encourage you to go back and listen to the episode without sort of getting way into it. But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, with all of that stuff out of the way, Pace, I think it's time now to bring in our guest. Without further ado, Adam Bjorn. CEO of Plannatech, a longtime sports bettor, a former sportsbook trader, and a guy who spent his entire life in the sports betting space. He's even played both sides at the same time. Adam, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
I was really looking forward to having you on our show here and to sort of share your knowledge and expertise with our audience. But many of them may not be familiar with you. And so I want to ask you, if you could give us your backstory, but we don't have a whole lot of time for this. And as I mentioned off the top here, you literally have an entire lifetime of sports betting experience. So can you give us a bit of the Coles Notes version of who you are as a sports bettor, where it began, and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, as I have these conversations now, it sort of was going from 10 years, 20 years now. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, I think it is, going into next year. The basics is, I gambled on horses and whatnot as a teenager. I think I can date it back to when I was about 10. Straight out of high school, ended up working as like a junior ticket writer in Australia. Did that for a number of years, got into the betting aspect of it where I was dealing with multiple sides of the world. Internet was new, whatnot. Took advantage of very slow-moving information in the Australian books. Won my welcome out there pretty quickly. And in 2000, just after the Olympics, I emailed 150 sports books, which within 48 hours, I'd done an agreement to move to Jamaica. So literally moved, and as I got to Jamaica, I found a globe, opposite parts of the world, and then literally spent 20 years in Jamaica doing different things. Obviously, not being an American, offshore wasn't offshore to me. It was just sports books in countries and things like that. So I had complete access to that. Another great background tidbit is taxes in Australia, not on sports gambling. Jamaica, there's no taxes on sport gambling winnings. So, I sort of had the freedom of just rolling hard and whatnot. And then did some time in Curacao, was in India doing cricket at one point. And then which kind of led me into doing some consulting for Betcris, opened up a franchise, Betcris Jamaica, got my bookmaker's license there. But, I've sort of, as you said, both sides of the counter, risk trader management. I bet better when I work. So I had times where I'd try going to the beach and betting from the beach, but it just didn't work. So I was just better off being in a room. And ultimately now I'm building the tech between the front end and the back end. I know how to place a bet. I know what customers are looking for. I know how to offer bets, take bets, do the risk management, and sort of fell into this spot where majority of the techs in the industry are built by people that have never placed a bet or taken a bet. And I saw this as an opportunity of trying to build that piece in the middle to reduce the friction between the two worlds that I've lived. And I sort of say now it's who I am, not what I do, for 3 decades.
I would say, yeah, very much is who you are as a person. I mean, starting at the age of 10 and you've kind of been at it ever since in one way, shape, or form. I've got to ask you, though, how did you kind of mentioned that you were working at sportsbooks, as a trader, but you were also betting at the same time. Can you expand a little bit on that and kind of how did that work? I imagine that one sort of fed into the other.
Yeah. I mean, one, I was doing the work to get the numbers. So I was literally doing, 16-hour, 18-hour days, knowing sports, and there was nothing that I wouldn't bet on from kind of mid-90s to 2010 or something. In Australia, I was working for a book that was doing US sports. A guy had moved over from Chicago, set up 800 number and was operating in that. So I was learning US sports and betting into Australian books, and they had no idea. They had a Don Best at the time. I think it was sports something. So I was working nights doing that. So I'm getting all the information early. I'm getting real numbers from Vegas. I'm getting ARB opportunities where I'm getting, minus 150 one side, plus 350 the other side, just stuff that doesn't exist in the world today. And again, I've worked at books that have never really limited or kicked people out. So I'm also seeing a bet ticker that has the best gamblers in the world coming through that bet ticker. And as I see that, I get the information. I can either hold up a line, move the line, and then I'm going and betting it everywhere else. Then I move to this side of the world, and I'm working for American books in a sense of American sports eccentric, but they're offering tennis, golf, soccer, Aussie rules, rugby, and all these things. So I'm picking the eyes out of them. So it kind of opened up 2 complete worlds that were complete islands of their own, didn't really know the other one existed, and have sort of had the freedom of, I look back and majority of my bets were probably from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., wherever that book existed in the world, because I learned also that none of these operations had night shifts. It was like 1 or 2 people, or it was trying to automate it and whatnot. So I knew the back end of how to take advantage of books to a point where every time I left a book, I knew their weaknesses. So then I would just, they'd be the first place that I'd start betting back into. So I just had the edge of knowing how all the operations worked, the clock moving around, knowing a Betfair and these things that were market leaders, and just taking advantage of the weak spots. I really, as I look back on it, was in an era that just, will never exist again, because it was early internet, pre-internet sort of thing as well. I probably didn't take enough advantage of it, for where I'm at today, but I definitely, fed fat on the incompetence, I guess, of a lot of the books back then.
Yeah, definitely some things you can't necessarily get away with for too long these days. One of the big topics we talk about on this podcast a lot, and something that matters, in a big way to our audience is the practice of limiting. As somebody who's kind of been on both sides, you mentioned wearing out your welcome in Australia. As somebody who's been on both sides, what kind of advice would you offer to our audience, so that they could at least prolong the period of signing up for a sports book and getting limited on a sports book? Because, sometimes it can happen really quickly.
I mean, I kind of find it all comical these days, especially in the American market that it is now, because, by 2004 or 5, I'd had thousands of accounts closed. My mum had 400 or 500 closed. I've had access to traders that have worked in like Bet365 and that. So they've looked up my accounts and sort of seen notes in the background. Even when I went and consulted for Betcris, I saw, the notes in my accounts and stuff like that. Today, it's really, it's targeting the big sports. Like, there is edges, there still is efficiencies in the big sports where you can get limits down and things like that. If you're going after player props, doesn't matter where you're betting in the world, your longevity isn't there. There's still places in the world that you could bet into. I have an advantage. There's a number of sports books in Jamaica that I still play into. It's all cash over the counter or kiosks, so it's not account betting. But also, one of those sports books does not offer golf anymore. Like, they've literally taken golf off the screen as a betting option because we just took them to town so much on that particular sport. But then that B2B operator also operates in another 10 or 15 countries, and they offer the golf in those places. So it's really about finding potential partners or teammates and things that I never did. I was very much a solo bettor, solo operator. And that's why I say I probably could have taken more advantage of it, doing this as a team or with partners or with groups like that. And I think ultimately the networking is the key to survival these days as bettors, because there's a lot of groups and smart guys and syndicates that when I sort of peg them and find where they're at, I'm telling them the future is on the other side. Ultimately, to build a software or build something where they're putting it on the bookmaker side and then just letting everybody bet, even the wise guys and stuff like that, if their stuff's good enough.
Right.
So it's really about the evolution of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. Parlays, betting $25 parlays, rounding and robins and things like that. There's ways you can try and put the cent off what you're doing early on. Just cost yourself a few $1,000s, run a negative $4,000 or $5,000 account, and then find the opportunities to just tear through it. Know that in a 3-month period, if you can get them for 40 or 50, then you've sort of killed that account. But there's little games that you can do that are getting harder and harder because sportsbooks aren't limiting people for winning. They're limiting people for having closing line value or edges or different things like this. But there's still a lot of sports that on the very top end, games, first halves, second halves, live betting is, definitely a weakness for the books of letting, people bet. Numbers aren't strong or efficient, and being able to really chip into that and build that up. So it's really just being, a chameleon and evolving and sort of seeing where you slot into. And I preach this one a lot. The UFC, again, if it's a sport you like and want to follow, it's big limits, inefficient market. And for me, there's a lot of money still to be made in a sport like that.
As somebody who's been in the industry for as long as you have, and you talk to a lot of other people in the industry, is live betting kind of catching on, or is it still something that's very much under the radar?
Oh, no, it's catching on. US sports are a little bit behind the graph in a sense of you go back nearly 15 years now, And, the European books on tennis, international basketball was 90% live. It had completely done a flip where it was 90% pre-game, live, which just didn't exist. And then it quickly flipped. Tennis, some of those things, they're up in the 80s or 90% is live. On the US sports now, it was probably, 2 years ago, 80 pre-game, 20 live, where I think that's a lot closer to 50-50, even in the old markets. And it's probably getting up above 50% in the new regulated markets in the US. But it's a future. It's where it's at. People want to log in, play quick, get something down, and maybe exit, and then come back and things like that. But live betting is a lot more liquidity coming. It's catching on, and it's definitely where the future lays.
I mean, Adam, you brought up some pretty cool points there. I think for our audience in particular, one of the big ones is going to be the changes that we've seen with wagering, and how obviously there is this sort of cat and mouse element of being a profitable sports bettor, and then obviously continuing to do the same things that you were previously able to do. That can have a little bit of a shelf life, so you obviously have to be ahead of the curve and constantly adapting in order to continue to succeed. And I think that sometimes we can have a bit of an outlook where when something changes or isn't the same, that we view what we did as wrong, because, we had a group that came in and potentially exploited something at the same time that caused the books to react a certain way. But
Right.
Having not wagered with a group, actually, there's a couple similarities in our stories there. I very much started by myself. Having not wagered as a group and seen the changes that happen just betting as an individual over the course of time, because there are other sharp bettors doing similar things, but there were probably a few things that I was doing that wasn't necessarily being exploited by tons of people. We just heard from Adam that he shut a sport down in a country.
Yes, it's definitely one of my bucket list items ticked off.
Yeah, you could get like a belt for that, right? Like Jamaica no longer offers golf at their kiosks at said casino, right? So I think that the message there is obviously we have to always continue to adapt, and we have to take some of these blows and punches from certain situations. But the flip side to it all is the fact that now we have these options of these kiosks, and over the counter wagering is much more than just, say, Nevada now, which
Yep.
if we rewind the tape 10, 20 years, was pretty much the only option for that style of wagering on sports. So you have to continue to adapt and take those punches when and where they come, and also recognize that they're not going to stop. Like, they're going to continue to be things that are exploitable. One of the things we say too a lot of times is there's a lot of money to make money from betting on sports. Like, golf hasn't really been an area that I've necessarily focused on in the past. I've had a couple of short stints of success based on something that was very much in the moment and closed very quickly thereafter. But it sounds like it's been a tremendous sport for you. And it's always cool to chat with someone. It's very rare that I'm going to talk to someone that has more betting experience
Right.
and success than I do, but being able to speak to someone that does is really, really cool. And the first words out of your mouth being golf, my mouth dropped a little bit, because that, again, like, that is an area that I haven't had the best success with. And I think that speaks to working with other people, where you go, hey, Adam's not able to wager in Jamaica or Costa Rica or wherever it is on golf, but potentially that's something that we could work together on, where we go, hey, there's some opportunities from the standpoint of golf that are exploitable on these sports books that, maybe you don't have anymore, and opening up new doors that way, which is really cool and what it's all about.
And I think that's generally it is, all these people that are really professional bettors are all very approachable. If, I'm going back 20 years, like the Billy Walters, very approachable. Rufus and that again does golf, college basketball, things like that. Very easy to talk to. Always happy to give their time. The things that are happening at, like, Unabated with Captain Jack, and sort of, it's what we do. I mean, our goal is to ultimately, and while again I work on the other side of it, and now that we have Prime Sports just opened up in New Jersey, been open in Ohio, really pushing these arbitrage opportunities is something that I've done for 20, 30 years now. I was grateful to be on the side of my first trip to Vegas was for a fight. Costa Zabjuda at the MGM. And I'm getting plus 300, plus 350 at the MGM and Costa, and I'm getting, minus 130, 140, whatever is Zabjuda in Australia. Again, unique opportunities. But, the arbitrage in today, people are looking for pennies.
Yeah.
You've got, plus 101 both sides, plus 102 both sides. People are taking that. Well, for me, it's people they're not betting against me, and I can't go bet with DraftKings or FanDuel. So let these people do the work for us. So generally, arbitrages, all you're doing is profiling their accounts. If they're winning, then your product's not good enough and you need to improve it. Ultimately, they're losing because all it is you betting with other books. So kind of giving these opportunities to people that's their, they don't want the risk. They just want to play it safe and they just want to earn. It's kind of finding the various sort of vast people that are in the industry and the business and seeing what their niche is.
Yeah.
Again, golf is a spot where I know someone, they're very good at what they do. I've had people on tennis and things like this, and it's really optimizing what they're doing. So you're giving them value of taking bets and things like that. And then you're using that, as value for yourselves. And it's sort of, how does everyone eat? How you kind of all do it together. And this isn't a me versus you or a me, this is fun. I mean, to me, this is fun. And this is just about people love watching sport. And, you could say I've never worked in my life. I've literally watched sports and horse racing now for, God, I'm coming up on 40 years. If I go back to my very, very early days of when I was betting on horse racing and watching horse racing and going to the horses and stuff like that. So,
yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Adam. So we love Simon Sinek at In Play Live. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he drops the line: "Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard
right.
for something we love is called passion." And you kind of described that like you didn't work a day in your life, but you probably just work your ass off nonstop because you actually just are super interested in this stuff. So I'll actually ask you a question. And I think that just from our listeners' standpoint, we have a lot of people that use Bookmaker. So I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong. When you go to sign up for Betcris in the United States, Bookmaker is the same lines or the same product. Would that be an accurate statement?
So there's a lot of use of third-party stuff. They're not associated with each other. They're different companies. They don't sit on the same platform, anything like that. But there is a number of the Costa Rican operators that either scrape or feed or use APIs or the Don Best stuff to copy other things. So I think there are some variances, but there is some similarities as well. And 20 years ago, it was a lot more incestual with how this stuff existed. But all that stuff's been very much separated now for, I think it's like 15 years of things like that. But again, ultimately people know who has the best number, the right number, and technology has made it now where all that can sort of be scraped, used, API'd and things like that. And then the third-party stuff, the Bet Radars, the Bet Geniuses and all that stuff, they're plug and play, and generally you could probably have 40 or 50 books that are all running similar numbers.
Yeah, if they'll let you have overlap from account to account, which some providers will and some providers won't. But on that note, you mentioned your sort of affiliation and work with Betcris. Why don't you tell us about what it is that you're working on now? And I know you also just made mention to in your previous statement there about, hey, I'll take your action here and then also I'll place action there. So what is it that you're referencing when you're referencing, or what is it that you're referencing speaking to actually taking bets and then obviously placing them as well?
Yeah, well, the placing is, again, personal, and I don't do as much of that these days because literally I don't really have anywhere to play. Going back 10 years ago, I had Pinnacle, a few other screens, Betfair, and and Betcris at the time. And then I went and consulted for Betcris, so I literally took away one of my best outs. So it was more of then going on to the risk management side, the little bits and pieces that I do in Jamaica with the books there. And the exchanges are starting to, the liquidity is drying up, and there's not the opportunities that there was there either, 10, 15 years ago. Now there's a lot of crypto books popping up and different things like that. I've sort of been too busy to get too ingrained in it, but there is still a few things that I'll play and bet into when I get the information. Today, I'm running a technology company, never written a piece of code in my life, to manage people after not really liking people for a very long time. And ultimately, Betcris in Latin America and Prime Sports in New Jersey, Ohio, hopefully soon Kentucky, are the two front-facing brands where I'm seeing bets coming in. And that's generally sort of the bulk of what's happening right now. We open in New Jersey, I think it was March 31st or April 1st. You open doors in any place right now, and your first 200 to 500 customers are assassins. So you can see that bet ticker rolling over, and you know that pretty much 90% of those bets are value bets and potentially market-moving bets or arbitrages or things like that. So it's really just then sort of deciphering that information and taking it in and then seeing what to do with the market. The betting opportunities for myself are a lot thinner than they were, but you still get some injury stuff and things on bigger markets that can move it, where you can sort of at least, again, find one or two people that can get down on certain things that I'm looking for. Now I have a son that just moved to Australia a few years ago. I've got another 5 kids that I'm waiting to turn age as well, so potentially I can add a few more beards to the family. But it's just sort of, again, having fun. For me, teaching them as well. For me, the sports betting, the gambling, it's just part of risk management and everything else in life.
Right.
So if you can nail it in that side and you don't fall into, what some can on the gambling side of it, it broaches into other parts of your life and learning risk management and decision-making and things across the board. So generally right now I'm trying to look for partners that are going into other jurisdictions. We're a full stack in a sense of we host everything, UIs, risk management, everything else. So generally just looking for people that have customers they can market to, and then do the processing, money in, money out. And then we sort of take care of everything else, have all the other tools in the shed. And just, again, trying to facilitate, because everyone's making it way too hard to just place a bet, have some fun, and, it's sort of the old school stuff. A lot of books out there chasing these 20 to 30-year-olds. Me, I'm looking for 40 plus, 50 plus guys that, have the bankroll, know what they're doing, maybe have the time if they're, 60s, 70s. Old school bettors that like their 2-3 team parlays or straight bets, meat and potato stuff, rather than just, raping and pillaging on same game parlays and taking 30-40% back ends without people really knowing on the front ends and stuff like that. It's pretty simple what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I as someone who has kind of not had children yet, but have thought about it and kind of steered away from that avenue, you just gave me a new reason to to be excited for 18 years from today. So that was awesome. But it's interesting because sometimes you can have an association with this industry as a whole where you think to yourself, this isn't something that I want to talk about with my children, or this isn't something that we should be exposing our children to.
Right.
But when you take the approach specifically of investing and where we look at things from the standpoint of, like you said, risk management, risk reward. Obviously there's something here, and that's why people like us exist in the first place. Yeah, Adam, I think that some of those guys and some of those assassins that are the first 2 to 500 to the sports books that you're referencing there, or maybe a few of the guys that are inside of our group. But it's a really interesting lens, the way you kind of give us that viewpoint of seeing some of that action come in and actually being able to look at it from the sports book side and having that angle. I think that in the world of stocks, you would be behind bars for maybe some insider trading. But I think that in this industry, I'm sure that you've had some books that haven't paid you out and had to deal with some of the curveballs that, many of us winning players do have to face. But the lens that you have is really, really cool. I honestly, just from hearing this, short segment with you, I already feel like I look up to you in a ton of ways with your history and how well you've done in the industry. So just from the standpoint of like how people can find you, what you're up to now, like anything that you want to add there, I think people would be really interested in.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter is where I've sort of been hanging out the most in recent times, at Adam Bjorn, BJORN2. I did a live streaming for the last round of the Golf Masters on Twitch. So I sort of broke my cherry there. So I'm going to try and do a bit more stuff where, again, behind the scenes stuff. I don't know how much of the ticker and stuff I can show at times during maybe a live game, and maybe trade some different sports live, whatnot. With the summer coming up, a lot of cricket, a lot of soccer, which is kind of niche markets for the US that I don't think people have really gotten into or understood that there's probably a lot of money to be made there, especially the US books are very soft and maybe a bit inefficient on some of these lines and sports. But yeah, generally the goal right now is, originally it was to try and educate the American bettors, try and explain, how it really works, what they should be looking for, whatnot. I've come to the realization more recently that I'm not sure that's actually a possible thing, in a sense of they don't want to necessarily do the work. They don't want to read the previews. They don't want to get all the information and then come up with the answer themselves. They want the answer. They want one line, Pittsburgh +7 or Islanders minus half a puck or something. So I've sort of kind of changed the way I'm looking at this a lot, in a sense of, again, I was hardcore sports betting. I get why companies need iGaming and do the casino stuff. So again, if you're building a full stack, it's just pieces that I've never really looked at or cared about, but we're sort of trying to add potentially down the road. Again, for a long time, it was always sportsbooks in the US were the redheaded stepchild. They stuck in the corner, big mega casinos, sportsbook down there, stay quiet, don't get into too much trouble. PASPA rolls out, these casinos start to think that they're now sportsbooks operators, stick their head out, get it chopped off, and now they're starting to roll that back. So ultimately for me, it's trying to either potentially engage in taking over some of those sportsbooks and offering different service or whatnot, taking our technology into other states with other partners that either have databases that have, they tried it, didn't work, failed, just looking at it differently. But ultimately it's to serve. This is a hospitality business at the end of the day. And for me personally, it's sort of rolling out, meeting more people, finding out where they fit in the ecosystem. Do they have data products, that building models? Is it something that, I'll walk them in the back door and service them as much as I can if they're in a jurisdiction that we're in, like New Jersey and Ohio at the moment. Maybe they live in Latin America. Maybe they're in Asia in one place that can bet into Betcris and things like that. And just sort of, again, ultimately it's taking the best of the bettors, ingesting that, giving them somewhere to play, taking that information, because ultimately information is, liquidity and information. You get those two things, then you can offset these bigger bettors and the pros and what getting that information, what's it value to you, And then you can just set up strong numbers with bigger limits where you're confident that anybody can walk through the door and place a bet, and you're at least sort of, on par with them. You're not at a negative EV or, behind the eight ball on those bigger limits. So ultimately for me, it's just sort of going outside of my comfort zone a lot, meeting as many people as possible, doing podcasts, whatnot, to try and both educate and just make myself open and available to answer questions. And then ultimately building a business as well, and doing that in a manner where, smart, you've got to sort of take some back steps at times. I think New Jersey is a good example. We went out there, we rolled in with, probably bigger limits than we should with the bankroll, and really sort of wanted to push forward. We put some traders in there that sort of were thinking, there won't be much volume in that. We don't need to go, the oversight doesn't need to be as hard. But again, assassins come in, numbers need to be sharper. Limits can roll back a little bit because ultimately, the players are still getting a fair bet. They're not getting limited to 25 cents on things. They're getting the same limit that everybody getting. If, Spanky's getting, even if it's a player prop and Spanky's getting $200 on it, everybody's getting $200 on it. And that's kind of the other philosophy, is the limits are bottom up. Everybody's getting the baseline house limits at worst. No one's getting chopped under that. And then ultimately it's just, again, trying to build a business, take away the friction, and, give a service that players and bettors deserve.
Yeah, Adam, that's incredible. I think one of the best parts of your story there too is also, you're a pro bettor turned person who's now offering that opportunity to people. And like, when I think about everything that we're doing at In Play Live and how we try to help bettors actually make these more informed and responsible decisions that hopefully have a positive expected value with them associated as well, that lead to a long-term profit. You're giving people like us a place through what it is that you're doing to be able to wager. I know it's maybe not in all the states that you'd like it to be today, but
Right.
really cool nonetheless. So thanks for that. Adam Bjorn 2 on Twitter, if you guys want to follow the journey and check him out, and hopefully we'll get to hear from him again soon. Thanks so much, Adam.
All right. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Adam Bjorn. Man, what a life in sports betting. Incredible story there. And we only really scratched the surface. I mean, there's just so much more that you can get into with that guy, and way more than we can contain in this single podcast episode. But what is really cool is what he's doing with his company there, Plannatech, and the work he's doing with Prime. To sort of see this sports book, launch in Ohio. And we kind of watched it then like, oh, hey, here's another one, that is not going to be limiting winners. They're looking to create a more fair playing field between bettor and operator. And now with them launching in New Jersey, I think big things are ahead for that sports book. And I'm really excited to see it grow and continue to maybe expand into other states. And who knows, maybe they'll even bring it north of the border.
Yeah. I mean, Adam's like, it's a special guy to have on the show, a betting bookmaker. So, takes bets because he knows how sharp he is, but also offers that to all winning players in any jurisdiction between the different platforms that he has either worked with or currently is working with now today. Oh man, the conversations I've had with this guy offline since we did that interview, Shane, are just like, they're crazy. There's some stuff I can share, there's some stuff that I can't, but like, my God, we really only did scratch the surface. Like, this guy found out that major players in the industry were using his lines for various different sporting and racing events. And he like trapped the Vegas Strip into his lines, like intentionally. The guy is like downright brilliant. One of the greatest betting minds on planet Earth, like without question. And let's put it this way: like, when you use Prime Prime is the sports book that doesn't limit winners. They are using Plannatech to offer their lines, which is Adam's company, right? So we've talked about odds providers and all that kind of stuff. That is an agreement between Prime and Plannatech, whereas he has been so sharp over the years that other sports books, like prominent Las Vegas, major brands, they've used his lines just because, like, that, without that agreement in place. So that's where he was like, hey, you just gave a great opportunity to me. I'm going to go see what I can do with it. So what I can say is that his involvement with In Play Live is going to be increasing, and it simply might be a Q&A with him, with some of our members, but we're gonna go down that path and see where it takes us. Also, the lens that he has, I think the lens that we have at In Play Live is incredible, where we get to see like how different sports books are treating people in different jurisdictions, and everything that sort of keeps us at the forefront as new members come and go. But the lens that Adam has is tremendous because he gets to see some of this live action come in on Prime and on his platforms, where he sees like potentially a syndicate come in and make a certain bet, and then gets to decide, hey, am I going to change the line based on, these people that just came in and made this action? Or am I going to say, hey guys, bring it on. Like, let's let it rip. So he has that lens. He gets to see the sharp action coming in a way that a lot of other pro bettors wouldn't be able to see. And that's where, some of the opportunities with him and the education and things like that are just going to be really exciting. So huge thank you to him for coming on the show. And hopefully it's the start of a lot of great things between him, his company, and us.
Wow, that's really exciting. I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, I'd love to have him back on the show. Like I said, we only scratched the surface, so there's so much more we could discuss. But any opportunity to pick a guy's brain like that, that just can't be passed up. And you called him a brilliant betting mind, and absolutely. And it's so understated. There's no pretense there. He's just such a really kind of easily relatable guy, which makes it that much more fun and enjoyable of a discussion.
Meanwhile, the guy literally betting certain strategies, like golf isn't offered live in Jamaica because
yeah, exactly, right.
Like, yeah, I go to the kiosk and like they don't offer golf, and and a lot of the things that he does do really well at are things that I maybe not like don't even I haven't even seen as a potential to even wager on. Like, the guy is so excited for the Olympics this year. He's insanely excited for the Euro. He loves cricket. He was just at the Kentucky Derby. Sent us a couple shots from there. So yeah, he's into obviously the whole horse racing world. He's just got a skill set that's very unique in the betting landscape, and wagers on a lot of things that, especially, obviously with someone not being from North America, really, you do focus on a lot of different sports that, us in North America, we like our basketball or football. There is some hockey, obviously, but, a lot of things. There's a whole other sports world out there that we don't necessarily pay as much attention to as we could, and I know he certainly does.
Yeah. Well, really looking forward to sort of seeing his involvement with In Play Live and seeing how that develops. Super, super cool stuff there. Pace, I have a feeling that a guy like Adam Bjorn maybe doesn't use OddsJam. Maybe he does. I don't know. I mean, he might.
Well, I think he has a lot of the technology built into his infrastructure, because the lines that he produces has to kind of meet in the middle with a lot of stuff.
Right.
A lot of times when you are up using OddsJam, there are middles and arbitrage opportunities to Pinnacle, to some of the other sports books. And sometimes Pinnacle is the best line on one of the two sides, but generally speaking, Pinnacle lands in the middle, and I would presume that a lot of the lines at Prime would as well. So he certainly, whether he uses that product directly, I'm not sure, but what I love about that product is it gives us the opportunity to see all that stuff. So as you know, Shane, with the NBA playoffs, we've just been freaking killing it with some of the strategies that we're betting on. Obviously it's not high volume, but you can really credit sometimes just having that sportsbook screen at OddsJam up to being able to get that better line, which oftentimes is the difference of literally making a unit or losing a unit. And that can be sometimes a 2-unit swing, right? So getting the best lines important. You can head over to OddsJam, just enter code INPLAY for INPLAY live for 15% off every single month. You can use InPlay Live 15. So InPlay Live for 35% off your first month, or InPlay Live 15 for 15% off every month. And OddsJam does have a free trial. So I know we just I don't know how this turned into an OddsJam discussion, but if you have never tried it, go try it. Put the code in, you get 7 days for free. Give it a shot. You can bet.
Look at that.
You can bet like us and like Adam.
There you go. And just for listening to the show and making this far, now you've got 3 promo codes out there to help you become a better. You've got the Behind the Lines, all caps, to join InPlay Live and see what InPlay Live is all about. You've got InPlay, all lowercase, if you want to check out SX Bet and capitalize on their amazing bonus that they offer. And now the one there for OddsJam. So, I mean, just the value of listening to the podcast here is coming through in a big way for all of you out there. All right, Pace, what a show. Just really pumped to have Adam on the show. That's so cool. Looking forward to seeing what's in the future with him. But Pace, I think that's just about it. So I'll say till next week, keep beating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join InPlay Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.